Today's guarantee, you will find a better way to manage calcium and alkalinity for yourself, as well as guidance to others by selecting the right tool for the right job.
When is Kalkwasser or lime water the right solution for your tank?
This is the best solution for a vast majority of reefers, all the way from beginners to when you outgrow it, which most people never will, and these are the reasons why.
Of all the calcium alkalinity solutions we're going to talk about today, Kalkwasser is the cheapest, both initial and ongoing costs. Ongoing costs could just continue to buy one bag of these 4-pound or 7-pound bag of Kalkwasser, mix it up with water. Initial cost is a reservoir, a dosing pump, or a DIY dripper. Can't get any cheaper than Kalkwasser.
This bag right here might last most people an entire year. Kalkwasser also has the biggest impact to pH of any of the solutions that we're going to talk about today, and pH is that evolutionary step that reefers are taking today because we have that problem of low pHs in our tank. Low pH, slowing down coral growth, also making the coral skeleton thinner. If we increase it, get it to that 8.3 that we're looking for with the use of things like Kalkwasser, we can increase the growth rate by as much as 50% and get stronger, healthier corals that are less likely to break.
Kalkwasser also avoids salinity issues common with things like 2-part, where there's excess sodium and excess chloride going into the tank. Kalkwasser is probably a good solution for the people who do fewer water changes because it doesn't have this salinity issue. It's just calcium and alkalinity going into the tank.
Kalkwasser or lime water is also the easiest, meaning there's just one additive made into one solution with one dosing pump, and it's inherently balanced, meaning it's adding the right amount of calcium and alkalinity in comparison to each other. There's really not a lot to think about, just the easiest solution there is.
Kalkwasser is ideal for low to medium demand tanks, but what is medium demand? Well, if you think about it, it's a flourishing mixed tank, a fully jam-packed mixed tank, in which case that covers about 90% of reefers out there.
All right, so all that said, who isn't Kalkwasser for, which is just as important as who it is for? Starting with, if you don't have room for a container of lime water next to your tank, it should probably be about 10% the size of the tank itself. So a 10-gallon for a 100-gallon tank is probably about adequate. Now, if you don't, that's because this is a dilute solution. It is way less strong than 2-part, meaning I need to dose, probably a gallon a day instead of milliliters. In that case, if you don't have room underneath your stand or next to the tank, this probably isn't a great solution. And related to that, if you don't evaporate a lot of water, this probably isn't a great solution as well, because if I only evaporate a tiny couple cups of water a day because I got lids on the tank and I'm really trying to manage evaporation, well, I can't actually dose more of a solution than I evaporate a day, otherwise it will flood on my floor. And closely related to that also is it doesn't have trace elements in it like 2-part does, so you're going to have to figure out a different solution for that. So if you want trace elements incorporated into the actual all-in-one solution, this isn't for you.
Kalkwasser is also not for people who already have decently high or high pH, 8.3 range. If you don't have a problem sitting at 8.3, or maybe you're even a little higher, then why would you pick a solution that raises pH? You're only going to cause problems, in which case this isn't for you. And because of the pH spike or the pH boosting effect of Kalkwasser, it's also not for people who want to dose by hand. Maybe this is an early tank where I don't really need to dose but once a week. Dosing a lot of Kalkwasser solution at once causes this massive pH spike, which, again, you don't want to do. And same thing this is not for people who make adjustments. This is not to I need to raise my calcium level from 380 to 420, or I need to raise my alkalinity from 6 to 8. This is not the solution for that. One, you're going to get that massive pH spike. But two, these kind of go in conjunction with each other and raise in conjunction. There's really not a calculator to go from this DKH to this DKH using Kalkwasser.
Yeah, so Kalkwasser, how we maintain calcium and alkalinity in the tank. If I want to make big adjustments, 2-part the answer.
When is 2-part the right solution for calcium and alkalinity on your tank?
2-part meaning 1 jug calcium, 1 jug alkalinity, sometimes 3rd jug magnesium. But in any case, this is the best solution for about 1/3 of the reefers out there, meaning starting with those people that don't have the space for lime water, big 10-gallon jug. In this case, you can actually have a liter or even a gallon-sized jug. Stuff is super concentrated, will last a long time. It's also a complete element solution, so those that are looking to, they want trace elements, they want potassium, they want magnesium all in one, as well as automated. But the number one reason that I think it's the most popular solution out there is the fact that it can be dosed by hand, meaning this is where I start. You know, so before I ever got introduced to dosing pumps and automation, I was dosing by hand, and by far, a 2-part is the best way to do that. But there's also a bunch of other reasons where 2-part excels above the rest.
2-part is also one of the most adjustable solutions for calcium alkalinity because it will grow with you no matter the tank style, the tank demand. We're talking tiny tanks, jam-packed with SPS, or big giant tanks jam-packed with SPS, LPS, mixed tanks. All of these different demands and tank types, 2-part can grow with you.
It is the most versatile calcium alkalinity solution out there. It will work on virtually every single tank. It might not be the best solution for every last instance, but it will work in all of them. 2-part's also the safest for the household and tank of any of the options that we're going to talk about today. That's because the chemicals are pretty inert. It's sodium carbonate, sodium bicarbonate, calcium chloride, and in comparison to any of the other methods, much safer for the household, but also safe for the tank because it is way easier to use. There's just fewer ways to mess up. If you do mess up, they're often less impactful. So much higher percentage success rates using 2-part than most.
The really low initial cost is another reason why 2-part is so popular. For $15, I can already be up and running with 2-part, upwards of $40 for the same type of 2-parts in the aquarium industry. But we're talking all I need is a bag of chemicals, soda ash or calcium chloride, a couple jugs to store it in, and a little measuring cup, and I can keep up with my tank by hand for extremely low cost.
There are not many areas in reefing where you can use the best available product and get into it all the way for $40 and then automate it from there. So definitely the lowest cost solution to get up and running. Another benefit of most of the commercial 2-parts out there is a moderate pH boost, meaning that in most cases reefers are fighting low pH in their tanks, and using a pH elevating calcium alkalinity solution like 2-part based on soda ash actually will increase the pH of the tank quite a bit. Not as much as the hydroxides like calcium hydroxide, but about half as much, but a lot easier.
One of my personal favorites about 2-part is the concentration. This stuff is so predictable, the most predictable out of the calcium and alkalinity solutions. This one, it's so easy that there's calculators out there. We have a calculator on the website. We even have, single packages, single use, rip, dump into some water, make a gallon solution. You cannot mess this up. So if I want to raise my tank by half a DKH, 1 DKH, all I have to do is put my volume into the calculator, type in what I'm using, and dump that amount.
That isn't the truth of a lot of Kalkwasser solutions, your calcium reactor solutions, many of the other ones. Concentration of the solution is just less predictable, which adds in a lot more complexity. Again, why 2-part is probably one of the best options for newer reefers out there as well. Related to that, 2-part's probably the easiest to understand and use as well. That concentration is pegged. We know what it is. I either bought it that way or mixed it that way. There's calculators out there that are super easy to use, meaning I have a DKH of 7, I want it to be 8. I enter that with my water volume of my tank, and it says dose this many milliliters, and lo and behold, it does exactly what it said. There's also calculators that are how much should my daily dose be? They'll help you hone in on that. And as the levels start to drop because your corals are growing, all you need to do is dose just a little bit more every day. It's really easy to understand, and again, probably why a lot of newer reefers gravitate to a low cost, easy to understand solution.
Just as important as who two-part is for is who two-part is not for. And one of these groups of people is the minimal to little water changes. So if you raise your hand and say, hey, I don't change my water as much as I should, or I'm just in the camp of not changing water very often, this is probably not the best solution for you. There is a salinity piece to this. Over time, your salinity can rise because there's excess sodium and excess chloride left over. Basically, after I dump 1 gallon of each alkalinity and calcium solution, you could think that I'm dumping 4 extra cups of salt into my tank after the fact.
That's just a thing that builds up over time. So if every single month you had 4 more cups of salt, some of that is calcium and alkalinity, it's going to get consumed, but a lot of it's actually sodium and chloride. So if that builds up over the course of a year because you're not doing a lot of water changes, this probably isn't the best solution for you. Again, this is the most versatile solution, but not always the best for everyone. Another person this might work for, but not be the best, is when consumable cost is the number one concern. So if the only thing you're worried about is how much this is going to cost you over time, there's a lot of different options out there that might do it a little bit cheaper than this one. Kalkwasser being an option that is almost always cheaper in the short and long run. And if you have a super mega tank, just wall-to-wall SPS corals, you'd be dumping a lot of two-part in there, in this case for sure bulk. But even then, it might actually be cheaper to do something like a calcium reactor. So if you got one of those tanks that is just filled with coral and you're just dumping two-part in, it might be time to transition to something else.
If pH is your number one concern and you're using two-part, it's just not getting you to where you want to be as far as like 8.2, 8.3. Now maybe the commercial two-parts out there are not for you. There are better solutions for you like Kalkwasser, the hydroxides that'll get you more than double the pH boosting effect than some of these soda ash solutions.
Yeah, and so it's important to note that all two parts are not the same. Randy did investigates recently on which two parts raise the pH the most. And there are some that are based on sodium bicarbonate. You can go check out his video that have almost no effect on pH at all. The no effect is actually one of the best ones for newer reefers where you don't want to like spike the pH when you're using it. But for most people, you're having a problem with depleted pH, which means depleted coral growth, depleted coralline growth, and you want to get the pH back up. The soda ash two parts did by far the best, and the highest one by just a hair was Triton.
So when is calcium formate, basically carbocalcium or all for Reef from Tropic Marin, the right calcium and alkalinity solution for your tank?
This is a one part, again, not all that different from Kalkwasser, meaning you got one single solution. In this case, it is more concentrated, however, so you don't have to have as big of a container. But one single solution that adds calcium and alkalinity in just one dosing pump, one container. This one is a bit of a conundrum of who it's best for because it does a lot of things great, but with caveats. This thing will speak to you or it won't.
Calcium formate is a super easy solution, one of the only single additives out there. It has one pump, one container of liquid. Also, and it comes in 2 different forms. You can get one with and one without trace elements added in. All for Reef in powder or liquid form. It has the trace elements, and the carbocalcium is just the calcium formate, so just the calcium and alkalinity. So you can choose which one speaks to you, which works best for your tank, and only have a small container to dose out of.
I think that's the important part. Is Kalkwasser, big old container of lime water, where with all for Reef, you can have that concentrated, smaller package, one solution, one dosing pump. Cost is also a little bit of a conundrum because it's not the cheapest option out there. And in fact, with the liquid, it's actually pretty darn expensive. You get a convenience factor of one jug and everything in it, but you pay for it, you're shipping water all over the planet. So if you got a small tank, maybe the cost doesn't really even matter. A couple bucks one way or another doesn't make a big difference. But if you have a bigger tank, you probably want to use the dry stuff because it's much cheaper. You mix it up yourself. But even then, it won't be the cheapest option out there. It just might be the easiest option, one solution, one dosing pump.
Calcium formate's also for those that aren't looking for a pH boost. There's probably not many of you out there, but this is one of the options.
Yeah, I think most people are looking to raise the pH, but again, it's one of those things that makes it like a little bit more newbie proof in some ways, because pH, overdosing and spiking pH is one of those ways that you can really harm a tank. So not elevating the pH, a benefit to some people, but most people probably do want it. There's definitely one area where calcium formate, all for Reef, or carbocalcium all shine, and that is for people who do limited water changes. The reason for that is because, like Kalkwasser, it's calcium, it's hydroxide, it turns into alkalinity, adds the water. This case, it's calcium and formate. Formate turns into carbonate alkalinity in the water as well. There's no residual sodium or chloride, which means that even if you don't do like a perfect water change schedule, I'm not going to raise the salinity or mess up the overall balance of chemistry in the tank with something like this. So if you happen to be in that camp where like, hey dude, intentional or not, I'm just not great about water changes, something like calcium formate might be one of the best solutions for you.
So who is calcium formate not for? One of the groups is anyone who's looking for those instantaneous test results. There's solutions out there like 2 parts, soda ash, sodium bicarb, where I can go to a calculator, I can get a specific dose and come back 10 minutes later and I can see that my alkalinity is raised like 1 DKH. That is a measurable test result. Here with calcium formate, it's a very unique process for how we get the calcium and the alkalinity, in which case the formate gets broken down by bacteria, turns into carbonate alkalinity, and that process could take some time.
Yeah, so you're just not going to get instantaneous results. It's a little bit of a trust fall, I'd call it. It absolutely works. We used it here. You've seen it in Zach's tanks and the results that thing puts out. But yes, I'm going to dose it. And over a period of time, meaning probably an hour to a day or so, the bacteria is going to convert that formate into carbonate alkalinity. The results just aren't instantaneous. Another person this isn't for is anyone who's just kind of shooting from the hip here, and winging it, because overdosing calcium formate's a little bit of an unknown, right? I know exactly what's going to happen if I overdose your typical 2-part or Kalkwasser or even the calcium reactor solution. But what happens when you overdose calcium formate? Not only is it eventually going to turn into high alkalinity, I won't have the pH issues to deal with, but one of the fear factors in here of overdosing is all that bacteria might actually strip out the oxygen from the water. If you dramatically overdose it, the fish aren't going to like that very much. So, if you're just shooting from the hip, I don't know that calcium formate is the best solution for you. You should really make sure you're doing accurate, consistent dosing.
You might also hear that calcium formate is not for super high demand tanks, but what is super high demand? Looking at this tank that we had running on all for Reef for about a couple of years here in the office, I'd say this tank looks pretty awesome and probably the limit of where this is going to take you. When is a calcium reactor the right calcium and alkalinity solution for your tank?
This is the 1%, meaning established, super high demand, wall-to-wall SPS tank owner who will spend $1 today to save 10 tomorrow, desires minimal media replenishment, understands and executes a proper redundancy plan, and has just a touch of gear junkie DNA.
A calcium reactor actually has an ultra low ongoing cost, the cost to operate. Getting into it's a little expensive with the gear, but to replace this media a few times a year and replace the CO2 a few times a year, and that's all you have to do, extremely low cost all year long.
This is the #1 justification that everybody uses for a calcium reactor. My tank just consumes so much 2-part or Kalkwasser or whatever it is that it's just costing me a lot of money every month. Now, the long-term savings of this media is why most people will shift to a calcium reactor. Contrary to common belief, actually, calcium reactors are also easy if you don't overcomplicate it. Meaning, if you just peg the pH inside of the reactor using a controller, well, it now spits out, it's like a 1-part machine. It just spits out a concentrated calcium and alkalinity solution. It should be roughly the same all the time. And if I want to make it more potent, I can just drop the pH a little bit, or make it less potent, I can raise the pH a little bit within limits. But I can peg the pH, I can peg the concentration, And then the only thing I need to do, just like two-part or anything else, is adjust how much I dose every day. That's typically done with a continuous duty dosing pump. So really only two moving parts. Peg the pH and decide how much you want to dose. It's a one-part dosing machine.
That was a pretty short list of who a calcium reactor is for. A little longer list is who a calcium reactor is not for, and the first one is a new tank, regardless of experience. New tank meaning, a whole bunch of frags or, a beginner in this space. New tank, it has a harder time getting rid of the CO2. So unlike a jam-packed SPS-dominated system that has a lot of uptake, specifically CO2, it's just not the same in a new tank, and you're effectively dosing CO2 into that tank.
Related to that, a calcium reactor is really not good for anyone who's already having, low pH issues with their tank. So, make sure that you actually don't have that problem before you add on something that intentionally is going to add some excess CO2, and then related is going to lower the pH of the tank. Now, the reason why this isn't true with more established tanks is tanks that are just filled with coral and tanks that are filled with big thriving refugiums actually suck up that little bit of excess CO2 pretty rapidly, and it really doesn't affect it. So if you got a really big established tank, the CO2 added from a calcium reactor probably isn't going to affect your tank at all. But with a brand new tank or a tank with already low pH, not a good option.
Calcium reactor, not for anyone looking for immediate return on investment or has a low initial budget. Getting into the system, the reactor, the CO2, the bubble counter, the continuous duty dosing pump, the monitor, a pH monitor, all of these different pieces have a very high initial upfront cost. So your immediate return on investment, not so much. And for those low budget people also, this is going to return in dividends over the long haul.
This is probably a few year ROI at minimum. So know that you are investing $1 today to save 10 tomorrow, but tomorrow might be a few years out. Another person the calcium reactor probably isn't for is anyone who doesn't want to invest in a controller or a monitor. That can mean a bunch of different things, but you really should peg the pH inside of that solution. You should monitor it with a pH controller. If anything ever goes wrong, meaning the pH goes up or too high or too low, an alarm should go off. Now, not that many people buy like the pinpoint ones anymore because you're investing a couple $100 in a thing that only does one thing. Much more popular now is something like the Apex, which not only will control the pH inside of there, but if anything ever goes wrong, meaning like my CO2 canister ran out of CO2 and no longer adding any calcium alkalinity, I actually get an alarm sent to my phone saying, hey, come fix me. Or automatically shuts off a lot of gear if anything else goes wrong, like a regulator gets bumped. So really, there are a lot of ways to make a calcium reactor cheaper. You can strip off the controller. You can strip off a really good regulator like the carbon doser. You can strip off the continuous duty dosing pump. But every time you do that, you go from a really safe, reliable solution to just a little bit closer to hope and pray.
Also, if you were assuming that calcium reactor will add trace elements from the media that you are melting, this is not the solution for you. There are some amounts of trace elements, not as wide or diverse as some would have thought, and some have actually phosphates and elevated phosphates in them. So either find a trace element dosing solution to go with your calcium reactor, or pick something that it's already built in, if that is what your goal is, like two-part with built-in trace elements.
Yeah, so the thought process is, in the past, a lot of people were using media that literally looked like little pieces of coral skeleton, and I don't know, instinctively you just want to dissolve the coral skeleton, dose it back to the tank to create new coral skeleton, which sounds really cool. And it presumably would add some trace elements. And it did. It adds a little bit of some things, but it turns out a lot of those trace elements are actually used in the coral's tissue as well as by the zooxanthellae to regulate photosynthetic functions, and they're not found in that skeletal structure. But as you just mentioned, One of the things that often makes its way into those more natural forms of calcium media is phosphate, and a lot of it. So in today's world, we don't really use those types of medias very often anymore, and we'll use media that looks closer to this, because this type of media here is often synthetic, and it will not have all of the impurities. May not have a couple of those trace elements, but nobody wants the phosphate.
When is dosing a Kalkwasser Slurry the right solution for calcium alkalinity for your tank?
Slurry, the most important word there, because in most cases you would mix calcium hydroxide with water, let it all settle out, and then dose the lime water off the top. In this case, you're actually going to rapidly mix it all up and keep a bunch of excess calcium hydroxide suspended in the water so that you dose both the slurry and the suspended particles at once. Who's that for? Well, this is probably the sub 1%. It's an alternative to a calcium reactor. The biggest benefit is it's going to raise the pH in a way that a calcium reactor won't. But also for a super high demand reef tank, and probably even more finite than that, super high demand jumbo, mega-sized tanks where other methods just aren't working or just way too expensive.
That pH benefit, probably the #1 reason to choose Kalk Slurry over a calcium reactor. Calcium reactor is doing the opposite. It's dumping CO2 into your tank, potentially lowering the pH. Here you're getting the Kalkwasser pH boosting effect, but you're actually getting it more so because of the Kalk Slurry. And when it gets dosed to the tank, it's a little more concentrated. pH is going to rise even more so than Kalkwasser alone.
One of the things to note here is specifically this is beneficial to the super mega tanks, the big ones out there, because on a smaller tank I might evaporate a gallon or two a day, not a real big deal for my house in most cases. But if I had a 500 to 1,000 gallon tank, I don't really want to evaporate 20 gallons of water because it's going to rain in my house, right? So at that point, people are using lids, they're enclosing it into hoods, they're doing things to decrease evaporation, which means lime water just isn't going to work. I would end up flooding the tank, dosing enough lime water in there. So if I mix it into the slurry, then I can dose enough calc, raise the pH in these super mega tanks, and do it efficiently. If you're in this category, the initial cost of a calc slurry solution is lower than a calcium reactor as well. Not that much lower, it's not cheap, but it's certainly probably about half the cost. But in that case, these are people that understand the risks that are doing it, the pro-level reefers, because the risks of dosing concentrated Kalkwasser slurry like this are significant, and having the equipment like an aquarium controller that will automatically turn off equipment when something fails, let you know about it immediately so you can do something about it, and then also using high quality dosing pumps, like a continuous duty dosing pump with high accuracy, super important. This is something that everyone that is doing this successfully long term will absolutely tell you. The long-term risks of this go way down when you use the right equipment the right way.
The ongoing cost of Kalk Slurry, meaning how much this is going to cost you to use all year long, likely not materially different than using a calcium reactor. This calcium reactor media changed a few times a year, maybe change your CO2 a few times a year. Probably not going to be materially different in cost than just replacing Kalkwasser. And how much you're going to use in a Kalk Slurry, I don't think anybody's going to make the decision of which one to use based on ongoing costs. It's probably those other factors that we talked about.
All right, so who is Kalkwasser Slurry not for? Well, anyone who doesn't respect the risks. You are dosing something that is capable of skyrocketing the tank and nuking everything very, very fast. So not only do you need to look to the thought leaders that have done this before, and they're all over the forums, you can probably find some videos on YouTube on it as well, but don't just pick and choose the pieces that you want. Emulate their success, meaning use the exact pieces of equipment that they used, and you'll probably have a higher success rate. But just like calcium reactors, if I start to pull off pieces to make it cheaper, success rates plummet. Your 5-year success rates go way, 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 way down.
Kalkwasser Slurry, also not for those who lime water or Kalkwasser solution still works for. Kalkwasser can take you, lime water can take you a long way, surprisingly longer than what most people thought. So just no reason to go chase down the next cool thing just because it's cool and you're already using Kalkwasser in the lime water. If it's working for you, don't change it.
There's an important piece here. There's a lot of gear junkie in many of us, and so you all want to chase the next big thing. Can I make it work for me? Well, if lime water is working, you got space for the bin next to your tank, there is zero tree reason to add this level of complexity and risk to your system. If you haven't caught this already, slurry is a relatively new way, or at least it's being evolved and used in a new way. And so this isn't the best solution for anyone uncomfortable with the risks of being a trailblazer, because we always say trailblazers are the first ones to get shot in the back. They do find new lands, and it's cool. It's fun to be part of that group. But you are risking, in this case, a super established mega jumbo tank in many cases with a brand new method. So you gotta be really comfortable with your level of skill set in this and the ability to do it right, not just today, but for many years to come. So if you're uncomfortable being a trailblazer, or at least excited about the trailblazer, think about the risks of your super established tank because they're real. What didn't we answer today? Trace elements. There are 4 mentalities that will achieve 4 totally different types of results, and you're probably one of them and didn't even know it. You can check out all of that right here.